For many people, the side effects of the pandemic were more serious than direct health problems. That especially goes for people struggling to pay for housing or looking for refuge from domestic violence. Helping those people has long been the mission of an agency in Dorchester called Brookview House. To tell us about meeting those needs in a different way during the pandemic and the path to recovery is the agency's Chief Operating Officer, Deborah Collins-Gousby. Thank you very much for being with us, Deborah.
Thank you, Chris.
Deborah, I'd like to see if you could maybe introduce our viewers to Brookview House and talk about the kind of things you do to help women and children in normal times.
Yeah, so pre-pandemic, Brookview has been in existence for 30 years. We have 3 locations currently, 2 in Dorchester and 1 in Roxbury. But we work with families both in a residential and a community-based settings that are either experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. A majority of the population we serve is children, primarily mothers, single mothers and their children, and about 80 to 90% of our families coming in have experienced either some level or form of violence, or maybe multiple forms of violence, and that could be community violence, that can be domestic violence, that could be violence in the school. So oftentimes they're coming in with multiple forms of exposure to violence.
Well, normally you help a lot of people not just stay away from harm, but actually move to a better place. And I mean, literally by moving to permanent housing, sometimes by moving to a permanent job as well. It looks as if you have a pretty high percentage of people who eventually end up with permanent housing.
Yeah, so what we do at Brookview is that we begin to work on the root causes of homelessness and poverty, because what we want is our families, once they move to permanent housing, we want them to be as successful as they possibly can. So we begin to tackle those things that they may be dealing with. It may be behavioral health issues. It may be lack of job training, lack of job. It may be sometimes working in making sure that children are stabilized. It may be, it can just run the gamut of things. And so we begin to address those things one by one. Oftentimes it could be folks who are experiencing issues with CORI and credit. And we begin to address those things because we want to make sure that we're addressing the things that initially caused the homelessness so that the family doesn't repeat that cycle. And we have a 2-generational approach here at Brookview where we put as much time in, if not more, with the children, because we honestly believe that children will break the cycle of homelessness and poverty for their families. And so we do this 2-generational approach where we're working with the adults in the family and we're working with the children at the same time. And we're working on things that, so let's say mom may be dealing with, let's say credit concerns or issues. So we'll be working with the adult to address those sort of things, but we're talking to the kids in age appropriate ways about money management, banking, the importance of having good credit, those things. So we're working in tandem with the adult and the children around the same issues. We offer, one of our largest programs here at Brookview is our youth services program, where we offer, we're a licensed after school provider. We have teen drop-in centers. We want to be seen as a safe haven in our communities for the youth living in our neighborhoods. And so a lot of our work goes into those programs as well, because again, children will play such a big factor in the family being successful. And here at Brookview, we work with children from 0 up to age 24.
You should put in a word for Girls Who Code.
Yes, so we do Girls Who Code, and we started that a few years ago because we believe that we need to have more children of adults of color in the STEM. We need to have more scientists. We need to have more folks working in tech. We need to have more folks working in math. And so we think that STEM is a great way to build the skills of our young people. And Girls Who Code remains, and it was so successful that the moms wanted to do something. Initially, right after the girls had finished their first session of Girls Who Code, the moms asked, well, we need something too. And so we provided that for the moms as well. And then just recently, this last year, the boys are saying, what about us? And so we were very fortunate to be able to start a boys who code group as well. And that's been very successful this school year.
Well, I want to ask about what it was like during the pandemic, starting with what was going on outside, because between people struggling to pay rent and at least the anecdotal reports of increased domestic violence, what did you see going on?
So immediately after things began to shut down, we had to shift at Brookview. We had to pivot from providing services in person to running after school programs and teen drop-in centers. We pivoted very quickly. We remained open and have continued to remain open over the course of the last year because we felt it was important that we have our doors open to the community and to our participants. And so we pivoted from with our youth, we pivoted from a after school program to full academic support. Parents were struggling. Parents were struggling to try to figure out, how do I educate my kids at home? How do I figure out my work? Because a lot of the families that we serve would be considered essential workers. They still had to go to work every day. And so we needed to provide a safe place for our kids to be while their parents were off at work. So that was a big issue. Initially, with the young people, they were scared. Folks were really scared. And for for the parents that had to work, their children were concerned about whether or not they were going to make it home. Will my mom get sick? Will my dad get sick? What happens if my mom or dad gets sick? And so we had to begin to address some of those issues too. Behavioral health was huge. We had to double our staffing in our clinical services so that our folks can work with our residential families and our families in the community. And we had staff that were not only concerned about what was happening at Brookview, but we had staff members who had to also pivot to become at-home teachers. Were worried about their families, was worried about if they were also, they may have young kids or children, but they may also be taking care of elderly parents. And so we had to manage all of what was happening around us. And we just took it one day at a time. And we just, we say we met people where they're at and we dealt with it. We had to, initially, immediately put in some protocols in order to keep people safe. We were doing things as feeding, making sure people had food on a daily basis, to providing PPE supplies on a weekly basis to families here at Brookview and our staff.
Speaking of supplies, we recently noticed the problem with diapers, and you asked for some help with that. Why was that such a big problem?
Because the issue would just be folks being able to meet and have their essential needs, diapers, deodorant, baby wipes, lotion, all of those basic care needs have been a huge need over the course of the pandemic. Some of our families either lost their jobs or their incomes were reduced, and they were just trying to manage. And so the fact that so when the diaper drive became an opportunity, for us we would have these supplies on hand as families needed them, as they seek to enter back into the workforce, as kids are returning back to school and now potentially camp. Just to meet the needs for just the basic needs of our families was huge in making sure that we had those things, because income was at times limited and people were having to make choices between, do I pay my rent? Do I buy Pampers or food? And so the need was so huge for just not our Brookview families that live with us, but our Brookview community, that the need to meet for families just to meet their basic needs were a struggle.
Well, there certainly was an ask for help, but what about the organizational support and how big a response you get? What would you say about that?
Organizational support, you mean in terms of
labor unions pitching in and maybe some city officials?
Absolutely. That drive, the union officials coming in and wanting to support Brookview. This is not the first time that they've supported us. And the support that we have received over the course of the pandemic has been huge and essential. As I said, Chris, we had a lot of families who were just struggling to meet basic. So the fact that we were able to get funding for gift cards, the diaper drives, to help folks who were falling behind on their rent, um, uh, helping families with utilities. All of just people weren't asking for outrageous things. They were just asking for support to help to get through this last year. And they were very basic, just very basic things. People were having to make, at times what they would deem to be life-changing decisions. As we worked our way through the pandemic, as folks were having to heat their homes this winter or, pay utility bills. It was just so the support that we received from the community has been tremendous.
Well, we're talking about some time needed for many people to recover. So if people want to find out more about what you're doing to help, or if they need some help from Brookview House, what's the best way for them to find out more information?
Yes, they can definitely check out our website, www.brookviewhouse.org, or you can give us a call at our main office, 617-265-2965. And someone would answer the phone and then refer you to the appropriate department or a person for assistance. And so we want the community to know that we're here to support. We're here to support them, and we want to be seen as a resource.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Chris.
That was Deborah Collins-Gousby from Brookview House. We'll have more news in just a moment.